Hello. Waiting for some people to join. Hello, Robert G. and Rahul Patel. How you guys doing? You getting things done? How you doing, Cargan? I'm trying to eat some pistachios here for class. I noticed something, by the way, a little tech issue that maybe some of you are having. Somebody emailed me and said, hey, I tried to log into my virtual machine. I established the VPN connection, okay. I tried to log into the Windows 7 virtual machine that's there in the lab, and it gave him a licensing error. Well, it turns out, because this was never an issue before, that I only have a license for 30 concurrent users using the Citrix Zen desktop. Now, there's fewer than 30 people in this class, but I've got 30-something people in my other class, and they're also using these licenses. So here's what you need to do. Everybody should do this. Once you've established your connection to that virtual machine, the very first thing you should do, and this is in the instructions, this will prevent you from having to use the Citrix receiver. Install a remote viewer like Chrome Remote Desktop. As the instructions state, once you install the Chrome Remote Desktop, you don't have to use the Citrix receiver anymore. Okay, so you're still getting that error, Robert? I'm not sure what's going on with yours. I'm able to log into it, so I'm not sure why you're getting that error. But sounds like you got everything done anyway without needing it. But for those of you that still want to use it, I do want you to still use it to get the experience of using it. Not the experience of using Windows 7, but the experience of using a remote Windows computer that's a virtual machine, a virtual workstation. One thing that we didn't do is we ran out of time, and I would have liked to have done this, but I try to do this every semester, is I upload a Windows 10 ISO file and have everybody install a Windows 10 GUI just to show that they can do it. You don't have to have a license to run Windows for 30 days, but it's kind of neat to run Windows 10 on top of a Linux Proxmox server just to show that you can do it. It's neat stuff. And then you'll have the experience of doing that. Then you can put on your resume, hey, I have implemented virtual Windows workstations in the cloud on a virtual environment. So again, you need to follow those instructions. Let me share my screen here. If you're having that issue, email me if you are having that issue, because what I have to do is temporarily kick somebody off. I'll kick myself off because I'm usually logged in. Go log back in here real quick. Need to make sure to continue following all the rest of the instructions in accessing the EI Lab and setting up your virtual machine, which also should include, just going to double check it real quick, but it should include instructions that are suggesting that you install the Google Chrome Remote Desktop. Now, Chrome Remote's changed it a little bit, where it's actually a plugin rather than a program that you install. Double check this real quick. it should be within here. How to access your EILab VM and set up for remote access. Now, this was the old-fashioned way to do it by actually going into the lab, and you'll still have to do this the first time that you access it. You will still need to use the Citrix Zen desktop to try to access it the very first time. Once it gets set up, once you get access to it, then you want to install Chrome, install the Chrome Remote Desktop, then disconnect in the Citrix receiver. Don't log out of the computer. Disconnect from the Citrix receiver, and then don't run it anymore. Run Chrome Remote Client on your laptop computer or your home computer, and you can remotely view the VM, and you don't need the Citrix receiver. You also don't need the virtual machine, the VPN, because as long as you've got access to that local Windows 7 machine, and that's what I usually do all the time. I don't always have a VPN nailed up. It slows your computer down when you do that. But if you have access to this computer here that's running from Chrome Remote, you've always got access to your servers. You can go to 192.168 anything in the lab there once you've got that set up. So if you haven't done this already, do this little walkthrough to get Chrome Remote installed, and stop using Citrix, because what'll happen is people this weekend won't be trying to log in and do other stuff. They won't be able to, because I've only got 30 licenses. And that was something I just never realized, because the lab itself, the EI lab, has only got 15 machines in it. So there was never more than 15 people at a time trying to access Citrix to start with. So this is the first time it ever came up, because this is the first time I've ever had people try to use Citrix Zen Desktop remotely. Okay, you guys got that? Okay, so I'm very happy that most of you are making really good progress just in the past couple of days. And I understand a lot of this was because of me trying to mitigate and deal with the COVID-19 and having to figure out, oh, well, that's right, we can't go to the lab to do these first things that we wanted to do. So, and I was also experimenting around, which I should not have done. I was using the time to decide, well, should we upgrade to Windows 10 on the virtual machines? And that spent a lot of time, took a lot of time from us. Me having to try to set up this COVID-19 testing lab, or trying to help get it set up, that took a lot of time. So I appreciate that everybody's, for the most part, really stepped up these last few days. I know a couple of you have even taken time off from work to get some stuff done, which is wonderful that you're getting stuff done. And I'll keep working all weekend too. If you need to work all weekend, I'll work all weekend answering all the emails, as many as I need to answer, so that you can get to a point to where I feel you've learned something. That's where you're trying to get. You're trying to get to the point to where you can prove to me that you've learned how to do something with respect to using open systems and open source software. So the last thing I showed you guys was installing WordPress, and I kind of went fast on that. And so the final, at least for this semester, the final outcome, or the final point that I want you guys to be at, is I want to be able to log into your virtual machine, your Windows virtual machine, which I won't be able to for some of you because you didn't do it on your Windows virtual machine. Or you're going to give me usernames and passwords so that I go check out your virtual domains that you've created underneath VirtualMin, and that you have WordPress installed on at least one of them, and that you have at least one plugin installed, and that WordPress is doing something other than the default WordPress website. In other words, if I go to your if I go to your WordPress and you just have Hello World or the default theme on there, and you haven't changed anything, then it'll be really hard for me to give you an A. But if you have added the contact form, even if you can't get that Captcha working, although there's really not that much to that, it seems a little complex because you're having to apply for a Google API, but it's really not a big deal at all. It's pretty simple. So let me let me log into one of my machines that's there in the lab, and I'm not gonna use Citrix right now. I'm just gonna use the Chrome Remote Desktop. And I'm not VPN'd on this laptop, so I'm just gonna use this. Actually, I'm gonna minimize that for a minute, just in case there's something on the screen I don't want you to see. Don't remember what I had on the screen. So, has anybody ever had an embarrassing moment where you shared a screen with something you didn't want to show people? That's never any fun. Okay, now it looks like it's pretty normal stuff that's up there. So I was looking at these different captchas I have running on one of my virtual machines in the lab there. Blow this up. Let me minimize this. Get rid of that. That's my hosts file, by the way, that I've been editing. So this is what I'm going to do when you email me your information is I'm going to type in whatever IP address you said you were using and the name of your domain, save that into my hosts file so that I can open up my browser and go check and see what your WordPress or your virtual min site looks like. Excuse me, I want to make sure my chat window stays open so I can see everything. Here we go. So I usually just keep that open on my screen. I usually keep this thing open too because I'm always pinging. You know, if I think somebody's domain is a copy of something else, I try pinging to see what IP address it's giving me. So let me log into Proxmox. So at this point, nobody should be, or nobody needs to be logging into Proxmox with the root user. And even if you're logging into Proxmox with your own user, nobody should probably need PuTTY access to Proxmox at this point. Now, you might need and want PuTTY access if you're trying to use the PCT enter method to enter your container, because unless you installed SSHD, most of the container templates are not already set up to allow SSHD. And that's a common question that I'm getting from some people is, hey, I can't get into my container unless I use the PCT enter method or do it from Proxmox here. So if it's your container and you created it, by the way, like I'm logged in as Jake right now, okay? If I want to access that container at the command line, I should be able to use the console mode to access it. Okay, no, so I don't think anybody needs to be root. I don't think you need to use sudo. And I don't think you need to use the su command. You might need to do that from within your containers or within your VMs. In other words, right now I'm within a container. It doesn't say Proxmox, it says Jake Ubuntu 18 or something. If I'm actually logged in not as root, but as Jake Rocks, for example, that user that I set up under virtual min, then I might want to use sudo there. But I see some people getting kind of confused and trying to do sudo or trying to install Apache on Proxmox. And then you're emailing me and saying, hey, I wasn't able to install Apache on Proxmox. Well, if it says Proxmox anywhere on this command line, you're in the wrong place. You probably don't want to be installing stuff there. Okay, so, and again, after you've installed virtual min, things are no longer going to go in var www.html. You either need to move or recreate them. Probably no point in moving your little test.php over. You need to recreate stuff because now Apache server is looking in different places for virtual domains. Also, if you followed, there's a couple of the tutorials that suggest that you create the WordPress or you explode the WordPress package within the public HTML folder, which is fine. What happens, and I think this was your case, Raul, or maybe it was Robert, you did not have your programs in a WordPress folder, in your data in a WordPress folder, all that WP dash, that was all in the public HTML folder, one folder back. That's okay, that's fine. It's just that when you're going to your website, you have to realize, I'm not going to go to jakerocks.com/WordPress. I'm just going to go to jakerocks.com by itself, because it's going to look for the index.php or index.cgi right there. Now mine still does that because I don't have any of that. Now, if you want to move it, if you prefer people not type in the word WordPress, because that kind of gives it away, and a lot of people, they like to install stuff in the WordPress folder to keep it separate underneath public HTML, but they don't want people to know in the real world that they have a WordPress website. They don't want to say, oh, by the way, go to my website and then type in the word WordPress. We can set up symbolic links to point you there. So let me show you how to do that. Or let's Google for that real quick. Symlink. It's short for symbolic links. A symbolic link is a way to point to a file in a different folder and make it look like it's in the folder you're looking at. It's basically a shortcut. The icons that you have on your desktop, those are not the actual programs. Those are shortcuts that are pointing to where the programs actually are. You can do the very same thing in Linux. So let me see if I can find the appropriate way to do this. Managing WordPress deployment with Symlinks. Let's see if this one's good. Some people were suggest that you just move everything into public HTML, but I think it's probably better just to use Symlinks. Take a look here. Those are for some plugins. Let's assume that the root directory for our web project is users, Daniel, websites. In our case, it's users, jcrocs/public HTML. I want to find the right way to do this because there's a couple of wrong ways to do it, and there's a right way to do it. And I end up doing it the wrong way sometimes. And this might answer a couple of people's questions about, well, I'm getting errors when I'm trying to run WordPress. Might have to do with permissions. I'm about to give up here. Can't find one that I want to show you. Actually, I know a way I can show you. So I just don't want people to think that they're going into a WordPress folder. Let me go look at my, where is it? Give me just a moment here. Gotta close some of the stuff I was running earlier. Okay, back to this. Why can't I see everything? I can't see everything I need to see. Oh, I know why. This monitor doesn't display things quite. That's what I was looking for. I lost my stuff down at the bottom. Okay, so my stuff is in this WordPress folder, but I don't want it to look like to the user that it's in the WordPress folder. I want to make it look like it's in a different folder, but not actually move it to a different folder. Let's call it LN. LN minus S. I want to make a symbolic link. And if I type in man space LN, that's what it says for that. LN, make a link between files. LN minus S, WordPress to website. Let's try that. Oh no, we'll just do it that way. Leave off that. Okay, so what I just did was I said make a symbolic link that points anything in WordPress and makes it look like it's in a folder called website. So I could change directories to website, it actually goes into WordPress. Now it looks like I'm in a folder called website, but I'm actually in the WordPress folder. This propagates, oh, I didn't mean to exit, no, I did that. This will propagate into the web design so that I should be able to come over here and go to blow this back up. Back to my jQuery and go to, instead of WordPress, go to website. Or make it a number. Oh, excuse me, it's complaining. That should work. Maybe my WordPress isn't running. No, my WordPress is running. Oh, I know. Actually, I know why that's not working. There's a parameter called follow symlinks, which is obviously not on. So let's not worry about that right now. What I'll do, rather than guessing, let me just send you guys an actual text on that. I need to test it and make sure that works properly. But there's a directive that says don't follow symlinks from the web server. It used to be off by default, and now I guess they're turning it on by default. Don't follow symlinks unless you specify to allow that on the web server. So for right now, we'll just go to WordPress. You don't have to do the symlink for a grade or anything. But what I did want is for you to create add a contact form like this, and then add some way to prove that this guy is not a robot. And there's several different ways to do that. Several different captchas to do that. I go here and I look to see what plugins I have. What I did was I already installed the Captcha that actually adds that capability to all of the comment forms. You can actually allow comments on all of your pages by default, and it will automatically add that. But if you create a contact form like I just did, you need to explicitly add a caption to that. So if we look for no captcha or reCAPTCHA, there's two different ways it's referred to. I'll just search for no captcha contact form 7. Now that's the one that I installed there already. So that one you should be able to use. And you can go to the website and it'll download the code, then re-upload it and manually install it. And I showed you guys how to do that yesterday. You download it from the site, and you click there to upload the zip file, the plugin. That's the easiest way to do it, since we don't have actual domain names that are publicly addressable. You have to do it that way. And on the company's website, they will usually describe to you, plugin homepage right there, it will describe to you actually how to use it. Let's click on installation up here. So for example, this is what you're going to end up doing with that contact form. That's the sample contact form. This gets added to it. It's a very simple add. Once you've created that API key, and that's a pretty easy thing to do, so I'll just run through that real quick. I've already done it for this. Let's see, none of that. Let's go to the plugins homepage. No, it's not on there. Oh, I went too far back. I can't see all the edges of my screen. That's the problem. This screen's not really the right resolution for what I'm looking at. So I can't quite see the edges. What is reCAPTCHA? So all I did was I Googled for this. You can watch the video on that. It's this little I am not a robot thing. The no CAPTCHA is actually a newer version where you don't have this little I am not a robot. It just knows you're not a robot by watching how fast or slow you move the mouse around on the screen. I would prefer that you first try to use this kind. Whether you use reCAPTCHA or no CAPTCHA, they all rely on setting up a Google API to do the testing. So I sent out that link, and so in the instructions, we talked about how to set that up. So let's just pretend we want to install reCAPTCHA, not no CAPTCHA. You click there. You want to sign up for a Google API. No, this is too complicated. I found much easier ones. I'm just logging into my notes. It's in my notes. In my announcement, I mean. Rather than try to find it again. Here we go. No CAPTCHA, reCAPTCHA plugin form for contact, form 7. First thing you need to do is get an API key. You will need a site key and a secret key. To get these keys, you have to log into a Chrome account and then register your site. So log into Chrome. I'm logged into Chrome already. I'm going to click there to register site. It'll take you to this dashboard. You will not have any sites set up yet. You will click the plus there. You will type in the label that you want to give it and then the domain name. You can have multiple domain names under one label, like my sites, for example. And then you add your domain, the domain name that you gave it. Example terms of service. Click submit. Now I've already generated one for Jake Rocks. So it's probably complaining that I can't do that, but it says I've got some sites here already. There's the Jake Rock site that I registered already. You click there on settings, and then click there on reCAPTCHA keys. There's the two items that you need. After you install the reCAPTCHA software, which is a very simple install on WordPress, it will add a menu item somewhere over here, something CAPTCHA. It might be under settings. It might say no captcha or reCAPTCHA by itself. There it is right there. So it's under settings in this case. One of these items you're going to click on, and that's where you enter the information. Oh, there it is, reCAPTCHA API key. I'm going to click on that. There's where you plug in those two keys in this case. Now, the no CAPTCHA is very similar. You're going to have a screen just for reCAPTCHA and just for no CAPTCHA. It's going to say, here's where you enter that information. So all I did was I applied for the key at Google. Then I copied and pasted it. Where is it? From this screen, I just clicked copy the site key. Came back to here, pasted the site key there, and then copied the private key and pasted the private key there, and then clicked Save Changes. That's the first part, getting the API key. What happens is your website will generate a request, send it out to Google. Google will do the authentication for you, and then send that response back. And it's being a proxy for you. It's being a publicly known proxy for you. So hopefully that's not too complicated just to get that installed. Now the next step might be a little more complicated, and that is how to actually implement and use it. And usually it's a matter of, if you install the no CAPTCHA, for example, on one of these pages, it will show you what the string is supposed to be, and it's going to be a short code which is within brackets. Google for it, we should be able to find it. Add reCAPTCHA contact form. There's going to be a little bit of a code. It's in brackets, and all you're going to do is copy and paste that code somewhere in your form, preferably at the bottom of the form. So this is a little walkthrough of it right here. Okay, well, wait. So there's the little short code that's right there. In this example, it's just reCAPTCHA. They made it nice and simple. You find your contact form, you edit your contact form, and you add the short code to it. I showed you how to mess with your contact form yesterday. Where's that? Contact forms. It comes with the default one. There it is. I simply edit that contact form and I add to this, or excuse me, I don't add to the form, I add to the page that's calling that contact form, pardon me. Add to the page that's calling that contact form, I add that additional short code into there. So it's pretty easy to do. I'm not going to require that you do it, but I'd like you to try. Where's my chat? Okay, so at this point, what I'd like to do is just continue helping people. I can do it online if you want, or I can go ahead and end the Zoom session and just continue answering emails. But for the most part, I think I'm answering the emails. You guys are making pretty good progress. I'll stop the recording, and then I'll just stay on WordPress here if you want, and you can ask me questions, and I can keep on trying to help you guys because I can remote you. If you're going to email, by the way, do me a favor. I know I can look all this up, but do me a favor and tell me, hey, this is Rahul, this is Saraya, whoever's contacted me. Tell me which server you're on, which virtual machine number or container number you're working on. So you said, this is Rahul, I'm on server 5, I'm working with container 507 here. And here's the password. I'm trying to get such and so to work. If you just say, hey, I can't get my container working, I have to go, it takes me time to go look up which server you're on, which container you're talking about. So give me as much information as you can in the email. When you're emailing me, that way I can help you guys out a lot faster, because most of the issues that you guys are having with respect to the content, not the technical stuff of getting the VPN working and the virtual Windows 7 machine working, but the content stuff that you guys are working on right now, it's pretty simple stuff at this point for me to figure out, okay, you just didn't cross this one T or dot that I. And then you're basically going to have all weekend, and then on Monday, I'll make available, we'll go ahead and have a Zoom meeting, but I'll make available by Monday evening another assignment that you'll turn on in, which will basically be an exit survey, which will ask you to answer additional questions. Which virtual machine or container has WordPress installed on it? What plugins did you install? Feel free to install more plugins than just that. There's, we didn't get time to look at a lot of the potentials like online stores, online customer relationship modules, all kinds of other things that you would want to install potentially on WordPress to offer value to your end users, to your customers, to your employees. So does everybody know, or does everybody believe they know what they're supposed to be working on between now and Monday? I see WordPress, and I see yes. So it's pretty much WordPress. There were other things that I wanted to show you guys this semester, but we ran out of time, like clustering, for example. Usually during the semester, what I have people do is I have everybody back up their virtual machines and make sure that you're making backups. I need to see some evidence of that. I need to be able to go under local and go under content and see some backups. You guys I see some VZ dumps here, that you guys are making some backups. Usually what I do during the regular semester is I have everybody back up their machines at some point during the semester. And then I cluster all of the Proxmox servers together, and then I have them restore their machines and then play around with migrating their machine from one Proxmox server to another, because that has good value in knowing how to do that. Being able to move your virtual machine from one server to another because maybe there's a problem with the server, or you need to upgrade a server, so you temporarily migrate a virtual machine over to a different server. It's a good thing to know how to do. It implicitly makes backups when you do that as well. there's a thing called high availability, where you can actually have one virtual machine appear to be running on two different servers, or run on one server, and you can make a virtual machine highly available, meaning it's running on the entire cluster. So if the actual machine it's running on at the time dies, it can immediately and instantly start running on another virtual machine, another virtual environment cluster. So if your machine was on Proxmox 2, for example, at the time, something happened to Proxmox 2, it went down, your VM would continue running, it would just move itself over to Proxmox 3 and run there in real time, and the end user using that virtual machine would not notice. They might notice maybe a 2 or 3 second little delay or a pause, but then it would just keep on going. That has a lot of value, to show you guys how to do that, running in what's called high availability, or HA. Now, in order to run things in HA, and you should know those terms, HA, high availability. So make sure you know what high availability means. In order to run your virtual machines in high availability, what we cannot do is rely on the backing storage of a Proxmox server locally. So you cannot put your machine's images on local ZFS, which is what you're doing right now. Yeah, so just get WordPress work. If you guys can get WordPress working with reCAPTCHA, that's an A for the class. How about that? If I just state that right now. And you can go, good, bye, and hang up and go do it. Now, that you also have to be doing, Rahul, you also have to have already been doing the other things that I wanted you to do. Best practice things, making snapshots, making backups, making notes. But typically you can't get to this point. You can't get to the point of installing WordPress and Captcha unless you've got everything else working. You got to get all your ducks in a row lined up. You know, you have to have virtual mint installed. Don't put WordPress on a non-virtual mint server. The machine needs to have virtual mint installed on it. But let me finish what I wanted to say though. In order to run something in high availability, you cannot use the local hard drive of that server, because if that server dies or goes away, so does the local hard drive. So we employ the concept of NFS storage. NFS storage, or network file system, this is where we take some storage, and it could be another Proxmox server, and we set it aside so that it's shared storage, which can be shared over the internet, or over the network, not over the internet, but over the network. So that rather than having a local, or in addition to having a local storage, we can add, we would go up here to data center, we would go to storage, we click on add. Here's all the different kind of storage possibilities. There's local directory storage, there's the ZFS storage, but then we've got these other things. We've got NFS, oops, excuse me, NFS, CIFS, iSCSI. Do you know what CIFS is? Anybody ever heard of that? That's Windows file sharing. If I was sharing, yeah, I'll click on it and show you. If I was sharing some Windows storage somewhere on my local network, I could type in the IP address or the name of that server, a username and a password there, and the name of the share, and I could actually mount that remote storage from a Windows server on Proxmox and then use it for images, for backups, for templates, for whatever I wanted to use it for. Same thing with NFS. NFS storage, this is Windows specific. There's also NFS storage, which is generic network file storage. That's typically designed for Linux and Unix systems. So if I added NSF storage, it's essentially the same thing. We add a server. There is no username and password capability with NFS storage. Well, there is, but not within Proxmox. There's also iSCSI. which is actually a faster way. NFS storage is a little slow. CIFS storage is probably the slowest because all of the file names are individual file names, and they can be viewed on the Windows server. So if I created some files in Proxmox here, I could log into that Windows server and see all those files. iSCSI are block storage devices. So if it creates a block storage device on a Windows server, all I see is iSCSI block 123. And all I know is that it's assigned to Proxmox 2 here, but I can't see the individual files in it. One, that's a good security measure. And two, block storage is faster than individual file name storage. So I'm showing you this because this is normally stuff that we can and do get to in regular semesters. I'm pointing it out so that I can do my due diligence in teaching you and showing you guys what the possibilities and the best practices are for virtual environments. And the best practices are, don't use local storage. Everything is on network attached storage or network file storage anymore. That's another term, network attached storage. Some of you have network attached storage at your homes. Anybody have like a hard drive that sits not connected to their computer but connected to your network? Maybe it sits on the mantle down on the fireplace or something, and then everybody in the house can, and maybe it's even wireless, and everybody in the house can drop files to it, kind of like a local Dropbox. That's network attached storage. NFS is one way. The network attached storage concept uses several different kinds of file systems. It can be CIFS, NFS, Gluster, iSCSI. There is a popular open source package called FreeNAS, which if we had time this semester, I would have had you guys install and use FreeNAS. It's an application that you can download. You can run it actually as a virtual machine, but they usually request and require that you install it on bare metal. And it can take an old computer. Let's say you've got an old desktop computer laying around at home. Got a couple of hard drives in it, and maybe just one hard drive in it. You can install FreeNAS on that old machine and create a network attached storage server, as long as it's got a network card on it. Connect that to your network and then share the hard drive, that storage, to anything else on your local network that can also speak that same protocol, NFS or CIFS. Windows being CIFS and NFS being everything else, including Apple Macs. FreeBSD is based, FreeNAS is based on BSD, which is the same operating system that Mac OS is based on. So that's normally what we get to during the semester. So research those things on your own. We're not going to get time to do these by Monday. To install FreeNAS, to talk about clustering and network attached storage and network file systems and CIFS. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll stop sharing. No, I'll go ahead and keep sharing. I'll stop recording and upload this video.